press are reporting what he's doing here. They're reporting on the slaughter. They're reporting on what's happening in Kursk, and he doesn't like that. So he started to kill them at an alarming rate. Now, 5 hotels have been hit in the last week across this country, and it's becoming increasingly more dangerous for journalists to exist anywhere in Ukraine, especially the east. I've had a lot of friends who are journalists here who normally wear their press jackets, who have now gotten those press jackets modified to take the words press off them because it's made them more of a target. This is the sort of stuff we used to see when reporters would cover ISIS in the Middle East, because ISIS and these kind of groups were some of the first in conflict. It was one of the first times we'd seen press properly targeted, and people in the West thought it was the most barbaric thing possible. Press and medical and people providing medical aid are the people that are usually off limits in war. But Russia are behaving like ISIS. They're behaving. Wagner was basically like ISIS. They're behaving like barbarians in the Russian military, and they're targeting journalists like ISIS were.
Hello, I've got Caolan here from Odessa in Ukraine, and you're looking a little serious, but significantly happier than I would have expected, given the fact you must be bombarded by air raid sirens, if not actual missiles at the moment.
Well, I'm feeling a little more settled in here, a little more calm in this country. I've got more of a feel for where everything is and just having a base. But no, there were sirens this morning at about 6 a.m., maybe 5 a.m. And I looked on my phone app, which notifies you and alerts you which regions have missiles coming at them. And the whole of Ukraine was red, which doesn't happen very often. Usually it's, each region is specifically targeted one at a time, and that was quite unusual. And obviously I started hearing and seeing the stories coming out of Lviv. It looked like it was another gigantic hypersonic missile attack launched from air bases inside Russia into the skies of this country again. It was the same bombers that we talked about last time that took off in those airfields that launched those hypersonic missiles. And what was surprising today is that they landed in Lviv, and Lviv doesn't get hit very often.
Lviv is a city next to Poland, isn't it?
Lviv is 40 miles from the Polish border, from the NATO border. It's an ancient city. It's beautiful. All civilians. There's no military activity in Lviv. And it took out a number of buildings in the city center. Again, it was a huge warhead that landed in the city. Right in the middle, and it's killed at least 7 people so far, injured at least 50. A number of those people killed were children, which was horrendous. And there's photos coming out now all over the newsfeed of just the devastation that it's caused. And these missiles have been landing consistently in cities all across Ukraine for the last couple of days. Actually, I would say for the last 10 days. We had a city, and I'm just getting the name of it up here again now. Poltava hit in the last 48 hours. At least 50 people were killed. This looked like it was an education center of some sort. A friend of mine was in that region and reported from there and said it was just complete devastation. And that's a massive amount of people killed all in one go. And it seems like Putin's getting a lot more confident right now, and a lot more gung-ho with his missiles, because the West are allowing Putin to do this. They have given the Ukraine the weapons they need to hit the air bases where the planes took off that launched the missiles that hit Lviv this morning. But Ukraine isn't allowed to retaliate like any country should be able to do in a war and fire missiles back inside Russian territory, because the West is being too cautious. And people in Ukraine are actually getting sick of it, and I don't blame them. When I first came to this country a year ago, people were so patriotic about Americans and British. They'd see a British passport and they'd salute. They were so proud of what we were doing to help the people of this country, and that's fatiguing in a lot of ways. People seem to be shifting their mood towards Westerners, and I don't blame them, because they're feeling let down now. They're feeling they were promised a lot. The stuff that has to arrive here has been arriving very, very slowly, and they're not allowed to fire back at their enemy. In a war, and one side shoots something into your country and you shoot something back where it came from. That is 101 how a war works, and that's not what Ukraine is being allowed to do at the moment. And it's so incredibly frustrating. It's so frustrating for the Ukrainian people, because they're being hit consistently. Their air defense systems are not able to shoot down hypersonic missiles that travel at 7,000 miles an hour, 25 miles a second, and go into the city centers. So it's devastating. And I think it's going to get so much worse in this country. These attacks have been upped and upped and upped. Last week we had the largest attack since a full-scale invasion across cities across this country. And I think this is going to get significantly worse. Putin's humiliated about Kursk. He's annoyed, but he knows he can do this. He can get away with it, and he's going to keep pushing it until there's some serious retaliation.
But in addition, Putin is targeting journalists and hotels as well, I think.
Well, last week I spoke about the Hotel Sapphire that was hit. It's an 8-hour drive from here towards the east. It's in a place called Kramatorsk. I've stayed there before. That had a team of Reuters staff in it.
Evans?
Yeah. Who was killed. And since then, four other hotels have been hit by Russia because he started targeting journalists. There were Telegram screenshots that I've seen from large Russian accounts literally saying we will kill all the journalists in Ukraine because they know they can. Again, Putin can basically do whatever he wants, thanks to our government's nervousness to support this country. So he's now started to target the press because he can. The press are reporting what he's doing here. They're reporting on the slaughter. They're reporting on what's happening in Kursk, and he doesn't like that. So he started to kill them at an alarming rate. Now, 5 hotels have been hit in the last week across this country, and it's becoming increasingly more dangerous for journalists to exist anywhere in Ukraine, especially the east. I've had a lot of friends who are journalists here who normally wear their press jackets, who have now gotten those press jackets modified to take the words press off them because it's made them more of a target. This is the sort of stuff we used to see when reporters would cover ISIS in the Middle East, because ISIS and these kind of groups were some of the first in conflict. It was one of the first times we'd seen press properly targeted, and people in the West thought it was the most barbaric thing possible. Press and medical and people providing medical aid are the people that are usually off limits in war. But Russia are behaving like ISIS. They're behaving. Wagner was basically like ISIS. They're behaving like barbarians in the Russian military, and they're targeting journalists like ISIS were. And that's what's happening here now. That's what's happening all the time here now, and it's getting significantly worse and not getting the coverage that I think it deserves.
And meanwhile, Putin is in Mongolia being feted and greeted and not being arrested. But to be arrested, this would launch a war in Mongolia. No nation can arrest Putin.
Well, it's very depressing because when I was in this country last year with Sweeney, we were gathering evidence about chemical weapons used against civilians, and we provided a lot of that evidence, as well as putting it in my documentary, to the International Criminal Court. And there's supposed to be a system in place of justice. Things like the International Court, which Mongolia is a member of, you're supposed to actually act on those things. And I know it would cause a diplomatic crisis, it would cause an emergency, but for fuck's sake, did Mongolia have to give him a glorious ceremony when he arrived and treat him like he was the next coming of Christ? I mean, literally, he was given the top welcoming of any other diplomat that's arrived in that country. And he's supposed to be arrested. This is out of control. It's insulting to Ukraine. It's insulting to the West. But of course Mongolia are doing this because the West doesn't have any influence anymore. We're not even letting Ukraine, the largest country in Europe, fight back against Russia. So of course Mongolia doesn't care. Nobody cares anymore. The rest of the world are looking at Europe right now. They're looking at America and Britain. They're looking at the country they've supported for the last 2 years fall, be hit every day, not be able to fight back, actively get invaded, the front lines moving in this direction, and they're doing nothing. And they're laughing. They're laughing at the West. I don't blame them. So that's why Putin's going on holiday and being treated like a king wherever he goes, even countries part of the ICC.
Well, of course, Putin does have one advantage. That is, until very recently, he was completely dead in a fridge. And now he is resurrected and found himself in Mongolia. But I suppose in terms of reincarnation and regeneration, he's up there with Doctor Who, but not a particularly pleasant version. The Master. Are you a Doctor Who fan?
I never really watched it, so no. But I grew up in Ireland, and there wasn't really much Doctor Who.
Oh, my goodness!
It wasn't really culturally.
There we are. What sort of culture? So I know the other day we were talking about nightclubs and things in Odessa. What sort of culture is there around you, or is it all desperate?
Well, things have gotten much darker in the last week. When I arrived here 2 weeks ago, the city was blooming at night. It was illuminated. Everyone was dancing in the streets. I mean, it was warmer, but there was electricity. Now, the power is out. I'll show you a video that I filmed here last night, actually. The power is out almost constantly. This place I'm sitting in now is a cafe that's run by a generator. The sound of the streets has turned from the sound of people singing and dancing to the sounds of roaring generators, which I suppose is another sound of the war. It's very loud, having a street filled with cafes, restaurants and bars where there's a giant generator in front of each one of them. Deeply unpleasant, constant reminder of what Putin's doing to this country. So the mood is not as pleasant, but there are still things of beauty everywhere. There are still people playing on the free pianos that are left on the beaches here every night. Here's a video I filmed a couple of days ago of that, and that's just absolutely stunning. People still try and go out and find moments of respite and moments of peace, even though they're plunged into darkness. Every single night, the country's being hit in unprecedented ways. People here are amazingly resilient about finding beauty in the most unusual places. There was a drag bar that I stumbled upon a few days ago, deep somewhere underground in the city, where everyone was partying till before curfew, and finishing the night singing "I'm a Survivor" by Beyonce with a big Ukrainian flag behind them. So people still try to make the best of the situation here and to live a beautiful life. But it's getting increasingly difficult for them. The weather is kind of getting a bit more miserable. Obviously, as you can see, it's kind of gotten a lot more, bleak. But that's how it is when the summer is over. But it's difficult. I think the Russians have hit a large amount of the energy infrastructure, so all across the country. So it's going dark. Actually, if you look at a map of Ukraine right now at night, compared to the rest of Europe, it's shockingly dark. It's like a black dot. The Black Sea is indistinguishable from the land here now, and that's because that's what Putin does. He plunges everything into darkness, and life becomes hell anywhere he goes.
Yeah, the kiss of death. Well, look, Caolan, look after yourself. We will keep in touch, and just be careful. Keep moving around. Make sure you are not a target.
No, thank you. I'm going to be heading to Kyiv on the weekend for a couple of days because my friend is having a book launch. So if you want to do a report from there or chat there, I'll be in the city centre there for 2 days. But I'll keep moving around, and yeah, thanks for having me on again.
That sounds a good idea, and we'll speak very soon. In the meantime, can I encourage you all to go to the Culture Report, which is Caolan's channel on YouTube, and subscribe there. I think it's a really good thing to do. I'll leave a link at the end of this video. Be careful.
Cool.
I will.
Thanks.